Hello and welcome to day 19. Today we're going to talk about how looking back can actually help you move forward. And I know it's a little awkward, a little uncomfortable to talk about things that are past and that are also very painful. And I know we can't change or fix these kind of past experiences, but we can release them in a number of different ways. And you can release that by talking to a trusted friend, expressing yourself and vulnerability to your therapist, or just writing in your journal. Or you could just self-reflect while meditating. But we have to kind of look at these old wounds so they become scars, so they're not open and painful and tender. Because if those wounds aren't kind of taken care of, or at least understood, then they'll manifest themselves physically. And those stress chemicals that will run through your body when you're in the fight or flight response will just keep eating away at your insides and kind of make you sick. The kind of saying you're as sick as your secrets is pretty real, because your physical and mental body are so easily connected. So, as we try to understand these kind of past events that have kind of caused us harm, what we really want to do is create a coherent narrative of how it kind of fits into the bigger picture. And then your brain can kind of move on. Because it will keep chewing away at these things and causing some background noise if you don't address them. So we need to take the time to understand them so our brains have the ability to move forward. Because our emotions, unpleasant, negative, or whatever you want to call them, are just there to kind of give us a signal, a symptom to understand. And when we understand a little better, our brains will move forward. Take, for instance, sadness, which is felt by people all over the world. So there has to be some evolutionary advantage to it. Sadness is one of those things that's a teacher, right? Take, for instance, someone 10,000 years ago who brought their kid or their kids down to the waterfront, and their kids were killed by an alligator. Unfortunately, it's very sad. So the person goes back, the parent goes back, and they mourn for that person, they grieve for that person. And they do that as a teacher so they don't bring their other kid down to the water early in the morning. So that person doesn't die in the same way. So sadness, anger, all these negative emotions really serve a purpose if we take the time to understand them and think about them. But if we ignore them and we kind of push them to the side and we don't pay attention to them by either looking at our smartphone, drinking too much, or just kind of numbing them out, then our brains never understand and they never move forward. So, something important to remember here is that we can edit our memories. If we only keep in our own viewpoints and we don't hear other people's kind of take on a situation, then those memories will always stay the same. But when you look back and you look at something a little bit differently, and you remember that again, your brain will think of it differently. Because your brain doesn't remember the event itself, it remembers the last time you remembered it. So say, for instance, an event happened in 1985, and you kept thinking of it the same way, but then in 1990 you thought about it a little differently. If your brain thinks about it again in 1995, it will remember the time it thought about it in 1990, not the actual real event. That's how memory works. So you can reframe and look at something differently so your brain thinks about it differently, and it will continue to think about that differently in the future. So asking people for their viewpoint, thinking about things in a little different matter, it makes a difference in the long run. There's a great kind of story that kind of dictates this and talks about this a little bit, and it's by Wayne Dyer. And he talks about someone who loses their keys inside of their house, and then all of a sudden the lights go out and they don't know what to do. They're looking all around and they don't know what to kind of where to find them. But then all of a sudden they see a light outside on the street. And then they go outside to look for their keys, which doesn't make much sense, but because they can see out there, they search for the answers out there. The point being is that the answers were within them the whole time, they just needed to look inside themselves. But we so often just try to go look outside ourselves for answers. It doesn't make much sense, but it seems to be the most rational thing to do because that's where you can see. So look for the answers, for the keys, inside yourself, and try to fix those wounds to make them scars so they don't kind of dictate your behavior in the future. So for today's self-reflection, we're going to go over a timeline of your life and look at if there's anything you've overlooked that's still painful, that's still vulnerable, so we can kind of take care of that and help you move forward. So thanks for tuning in. I will talk to you again tomorrow.